With a new dawn at Hampton and Richmond, the Beavers Trust organised a Meet the Manager evening, where Seb White sat down with new man Gary McCann and goalkeeping coach David Smalley to discuss all things Hendon, Hampton and what the fans can expect for the season coming up.
I think it'd be nice if we could just sum up or summarise your career so far. You were a goalkeeper and in non-league goalkeeper. How would you classify yourself in terms of a goalkeeper?
Very good. It was a career. I mean, I was at Fulham as a kid, from the age of 9 or 10 up until the age of 18 or 19. I was non-contract terms at Fulham, but ended up playing most of the South Eastern County games in that 2-year period. In that period, they put me out at Sutton United. That was my first experience of non-league football. I didn't even know who Sutton United were at the time. It was, I wasn't as familiar with non-league football as my young man over there, Joe Ollie, is. He's followed non-league right the way through, but it was new for me, but it was something that grabbed hold of me, and I stayed very much in and around non-league for the whole of my career. I was Sutton and Enfield and Dulwich, and then obviously Hendon playing. But an injury to my right knee that needed 5 or 6 operations. The 6th one was the final one that sort of told me at 27, 28 it was the end of the road for me in terms of playing. I was nursing the knee on a regular basis, and couldn't get to the Saturday, Tuesday games in the end. So it was time to hang up the gloves, as they say. So it was, and then the route path become coaching and managing, and here we are now, 12, 14 years on. Yeah,
so as you said, you hung up the gloves. Was it always an ambition to be a coach and a manager?
I wouldn't say so. I think while I was playing, I was always interested in the tactical side of the game, and the different aspects that that you can see benefits from when you do things properly within the changing room. I think non-league football is has been very much about the camaraderie and togetherness and team spirit, and the bar. It's what non-league football when I was playing it was about. But as I got to the sort of middle part of that 25, 26, I started to take an interest. I think that was something that was evident, and obviously when you end your career at such a young age, and especially a goalkeeper, they say prime for a goalkeeper is them years of 25 to 35 and onwards. It was it was a tough period for me. I wanted to stay in and around football. I wasn't sure what route path to take. I ended up buying Chelsea season tickets to take the family, and done that for. I can only apologise if that's upset anyone.
And there's definitely one person that'll be happy about that.
Yeah. Sorry, apologies. I'm apologising. But I've still got the same season tickets now. I still take my children when I can. My grown-up boys that were small and young when we first went are now grown up, and tend to take my youngest. I don't get to go to too many games now, but we've done that for 2 or 3 years. Went home and away to different places. I've done the 2 early parts of me coaching badges, and started coaching my eldest son and my second son, and it was there that it just really sort of kicked on from. It was only youth football that I was in and around, but I was still very much in contact with Hendon at the time, and they found themselves in a really precarious position. I was still talking to the chairman, vice chairman and secretary at the time, and I'd had 7 years playing there. I was still sort of a regular attender and such like, and they just threw the job in me lap. It was no more than a phone call, from the secretary. Chairman took me out, and I sort of had a decision to make. I'd gone from, not having really any experience at all, on the management side in non-league football, to being offered a position that that come with great responsibility. And it took me a day or so to sort of to mull it over. Was I ready? Is it something that I was capable of? I think I was second from bottom at the time. I'd been on a run of 25, 26 games without really too much success, and I thought it was everything to gain, nothing to lose as such. So I took on the mantle. I brought in a couple of different people, coaching staff wise, that that helped and assisted me, and the rest is history really. 12, 13 years later, I find myself, at the next chapter, and that's obviously here, which I'm really looking forward to. But, you know, we had a lot of uncertain years at Hendon. There was a lot of, you know, difficult times, and, you know, I did have lots of, I wouldn't say lots is the wrong words, but I had opportunities to move on, but I made an awful lot of dutiful decisions in that, you know, that period I was there, that, you know, I felt that at different transitional periods in the club's sort of time, I felt a duty to help and stay around, and, you know, I turned, you know, a few options down that maybe would have benefited me, but that's me. I'm loyal. I'm committed to what's required, and, you know, I wanted to see it through. And obviously, the last couple of years have been much more fruitful for Hendon. They've found themselves a new home, something that we never had for 6 or 7 years, and, you know, maybe taken, in my eyes, the club as far as I possibly can or could this summer. And, you know, with us getting beat in the playoff final, which I know you can relate to, you know, on penalties, you know, 4-3, 1-1 in the game, you know, it was no different for us. And, you know, when the opportunity arose of a club of this stature and this greatness, I just felt that the time was right. And I was always told that, you know, you'll know when the time is right and when the club is right, and, you know, everything, you know, seemed to, you know, point towards that, and, you know, and here I am now, looking really forward to the challenges ahead.
And I think one thing you mentioned about, you said there were some precarious times at Hendon, and obviously the fans played a big role there, aren't they? It's run by the fans. You obviously can appreciate how important the fans are.
Brilliant, exactly. And I thank everyone for the opportunity to for me to get to know everyone tonight. But yeah, I see that. I relate to that. I mean, we were in a position for 2 or 3 years where we worked with no budget, but managed to stay in the division, or a very, very minimal budget. We were at the stages where the club was looking to be wound up. It was run by supporters trust that got together and see a route path for us. We had no ground for 6 or 7 years. The first year, I think we played at 7 different venues. It was a tough time, but we managed to keep our status. We managed to stay in the division. We managed to compete. As a changing room and as a management team, we took the duty on of bringing in some finances, much needed finances. I think we got to the FA Cup 4th qualifier and the FA Cup first round on 2 out of 3 years that brought in a huge amount of money that helped the cause at Hendon in a real troubled time. And so we all played our part, and as I say, I've made a lot of dutiful decisions in that time because I cared so deeply about the club. I played there for 7 years, managed there for 12 years. It tells you what the club means to me. But all stages in anyone's career, I think that, as I've just said, the time is right, and the time is now for a new challenge.
And I think you mentioned there, you were talking about the importance of your staff around you. You've obviously brought the bulk, the same people with you. How important was it to make sure that happened, and how important are they to you as a manager?
Well, I think Jack will tell you that was the demands that I put on Graham and Jack. It was a must. There are people around me that I trust, that I value, that I not only football colleagues, they're friends as well. So that was important for me. Dave come on a couple of years ago, and he's again sort of tagged into that group of, and he'll tell you that the tightness that we work with and how we work as a management team has definitely played its part in the successes of the last 12-18 months. You find yourself at a football club that hasn't got great resources. You're working with a really stretched budget at times, and you are continuing to build football teams, and we've done that 3 or 4 times, and you only do that with good staff and good management team around you and good coaches, and and that's something that you'll see, that we're all on the same page, and we all very much know the importance of each other. So they are key to me. Mark, the physio, fitness, conditioning coach, he's been around me for 10, 11 years. Freddie, 12 years. Fabs, Ben and Dave a little less, but all still as important in that management team.
Dave, sorry, you're sat there, you're blushing maybe, but a little bit. But what's it like to have worked under Gary in recent times, and is there a real togetherness?
I'll tell you that our management unit is very, very tight. We talk, all of us, all the time, every day, throughout the week, leading up to games, leading up to training, what we're going to do, how we're going to do this, what we're going to work on. We all have our own input. Some of it taken on board, some of it is like, well, we don't really need to do that. But we all talk, and we are very, very tight. We have a plan for each session. We have a plan for each game. We look at the opposition in great detail, what their weaknesses are, strengths are, what they tend to play. We go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and we all have our own roles to play. And yeah, it is. We are really tight, and I think it works really, really well. Really well.
And didn't praise me too much there, did
it? And again, I think obviously you've brought the staff with you. You brought a number of players with you as well. Again, why have you decided to bring? I mean, I think it's obvious, but why have you decided to bring players?
Well, we're working with nearly nothing to start with. I think that's what we've all got to realise. You know, I just said to you, it's virtually a blank canvas. You know, we had. You look at the side that finished the season, 3 of those were loanees, 4 or 5 have followed Dowson, 2 or 3 are trying different options out there and seeing if they can better our football club, which I respect. But as you'll find out, I'll turn the page quite quickly because we have, it's very much about us and our needs. So we had a blank canvas to paint from. So the first people you look at are the people that you trust, the people that you know what your work ethics are, what your demands are, and also the ones that you trust can make that step up. I haven't brought 16, 18 players across from the level underneath. I've brought the ones that I feel can make that adjustment and make that step up. I know it's been, documented that, there's players coming from the level underneath and are making the step up for the first time, but there's also players making, the step up that have experienced the level already. So, I'm very diligent in the way I go about things. It's, there's going to be a new team, that you've got to relate to next year. One that I'm going to do my utmost that you can be proud of, but it's one that I want to know that I can trust and believe that can be successful next year, and hence why I've brought some of my trusted, players across with me.
And obviously there are a number of the trusted players and very good players, but is there anyone that you can tell us now that he was probably at the very high of the list that you wanted to make sure you brought across and would be part of this team?
I think there was 5 or 6 players that were non-contract that we knew that we could invite in and get around us, and all of a sudden there was interest in 3 or 4. Then we had such a good season last year that we had to act. I mean, I'd have maybe invited 5 or 6 in, on top of what we signed, but other interests become apparent on the back of a successful year, and as you've seen, others have gone on to other football clubs. But there was 4 or 5. I mean, for the first year last year, I mean, and I say to you, we've had some troubled times then, but last year was the first year that we started to work with some stability and see the club started to grow, both in terms of the fan base and in terms of the continuity within. We had some contracted players there, last year, again to protect. I mean, I was contracted there for another year, so those players were contracted for a further year with me in mind. And they were, out of those contracted players, there was 5 or 6 contracted players. 3 of them I'd highlighted that I wanted to bring with me. Jack and Graham and the board have been brilliant. I couldn't have asked any more the support they've shown. 2 of the 3 contracted players we've managed to get over the line. The third one we went hell for leather to get him through the door. We had a couple of bids turned down. We went in with a third, I think it was a 3rd or 4th bid, was it, Jack? 4th bid, which was I can share with all the. I don't think the chairman and vice chairman have any problems. It was 5 figures, and it ended up being approved and agreed. But an agent got involved, and and all of a sudden the player was being sort of moved here, there, and everywhere. And the player was keen to follow the successes of us, but full-time football started to lure him the other way, and and we never managed to get him over the line. But 2 of the 3 that were highlighted, we've managed to get with us, and again we were supported by the football club on transfer fees for both of them. So it shows the support and the and the commitment and the belief they have in us as a management team, and they're doing everything for, in their power to obviously build on the successes of recent times.
One word you said quite a lot there was contracted. Obviously at Hampton and Richmond in recent times, we've had loan players, a lot of loan players, to great success as well.
Totally.
It can work, obviously, but I think, and again, one of the first things you said in your interview with Matt.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of contract loan players. I'm not completely against loan players. It's not my remit. And when I say loan players, I'm talking about short-term loan players. If the right loan player become available to us and it was a long-term loan, then it's a different situation. I'm not a believer when you're trying to build continuity and togetherness and a change room that's really pulling for each other. You fully get that with loan players. On the occasion, you do get one or two that that stand out and are very much part of the changing room. But that's in terms of what I meant in that statement, it was short-term loans more so than long-term loans. But the loan market was played brilliantly by Dowson last year on 2 or 3 additions, and it's not something that we'll completely ignore. If we need to go down that route and it's the last and final option to improve the side, then we will. But it is my last option when I'm looking at short-term loans for sure.
And just as an aside, obviously Alan Dowson was obviously a hugely popular figure here.
Yeah.
Have you spoken to him much about Hampton, or has there been much discussion, just any background talk?
Yeah, there has.
Yeah?
He's someone I respect. I'm more likely to have as much respect for him as you do as supporters. He's someone that we bounced off each other over the last 2 or 3 years with different conversations and different phone calls. I've spoke to him quite a few times in the last 4 weeks, mostly to abuse him. But no, not at all. I haven't taken it personally one bit with the additions that he's made to his side that have left us, and I know fans will take that personally. But we've had the same scenario at Hendon. It'll happen again, And as much as football clubs and groups of supporters, we will see that them players, very much playing for them. They're not. Majority of the time, they're playing for the manager. So when the manager leaves, they tend to, want to follow suit, and it's not personal. It really isn't. As much as you feel like it is at the moment, they are very much playing for the manager, and it'll be no different. You create that environment, that working environment that player trusts you, you trust that player, and it's no different with Dowson, the boys that have gone with him, and look. Of course, we'd have liked to have kept a couple. I took a couple out for lunch. I've done my utmost to try and keep, 1 or 2 that have followed. But our hands were tied a little. So as much as I would have liked to, as I've just said to you earlier, we turned the page quite quickly. If you don't want to play for this great football club and this great group of supporters, then we'll turn the page and we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think we all as fans recognise that, and we also recognise that we're, you're sat here with all the backroom staff from Hendon and various players from Hendon. The Hendon fans are probably saying similar things.
They are totally.
Some fans might be saying about working that, but that's just football.
We're getting the same pelters as Douse is from you, and that will move. We'll move on from that. I'm sure we will. Once we can relate to a good footballing side out there that hopefully we can, as I say, harness the successes of the last couple of years, and we can bring some joy to you. I'm sure there'll be forgotten players. So and that's very much our drive to try and make that happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the style of play. What, for people that don't know you and haven't seen Hendon before and haven't know your work as a manager, what is your general preferred style or outlook of the game?
We're very offence minded. I think that's something that I know you didn't score an awful lot of goals last year. I think that was something that Dow spoke about, but you was defensively as good as anyone in the division. Of course the defensive structure is as important, if not more important, but there will be a style of play that will be different to Douse. I know how Douse works, and I know how he plays, and I know what his remit is. I mean, we as a to put you in the picture of how we were last year, I think we was one of the highest scorers in the division, in a division that was pretty high scoring everywhere, but our front 4 players that played with us last year got 91 goals or 92 goals between them, which tells you sort of the type of style of play we would like. I think first and foremost is obviously to not get beat. Obviously, first and foremost to not concede, but we do want to play a style of play that's pleasing on the eye, that that you can relate to as a group of supporters. I mean, of course, it's got to be a winning formula. I think that's the first remit for any team, is that it needs to be winning. It can't just be attractive. But we will work an awful lot to making sure that the squad has offensive-minded players in there that are not just pleasing on the eye, are effective, and and make sure their stats read so. It's something we do as a management team. We very much keep on top of their assists and goals and their other contributions, key contributions in games. So it's that is very much our blueprint is we want to please, but we've got to please by winning games.
And as part of that, obviously at Hendon you had the 4G pitch.
Of course.
Here we obviously haven't got that, but
yep.
One thing it's important. I think it's important to recognise there's been a tremendous amount of work done by various people.
Totally.
To make the pitch to what it is now. Obviously, there's still little things, but how important is having a good playing surface for that, what you want to achieve?
It's one of the biggest factors. I mean, if the surface isn't correct, you have to adopt your game, don't you? It's we'll go to places next year where the surfaces may not be as attractive as our own, and we'll have to make some adapt the style of play slightly, and we're prepared for that. We'll have enough personnel in and around the squad to make that happen. But a nice, attractive surface, a changing room will tell you, a management team will tell you, when you walk through the gates and see a carpet that you can be proud of. I think that's a big factor, and I know the club are working tirelessly to make that happen. We're going to protect it as best we can. I know that the first team trained on it an awful lot last year, and there was other teams that were in and around it. We're going to do our utmost as a side to protect it the best we can, to make it as good as we possibly can. So, we're looking forward to it being hopefully one of the better pitches in the league once it takes.
Yeah, brilliant. And
no pressure.
Yeah. No, but again, I think it's an important point that there has been a tremendous amount of work by the
totally.
People. Just as fans, yeah. So I think we should.
I agree totally. Yeah, I applaud them there. So you can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked through these doors. It was the 24th, 25th of May, and I looked out onto the pitch. I think I walked out on it with Jack, and I said, "Really? Is this where we're at?" But in the 4, 5, 6 weeks, you can see what's gone into it, and a lot of people need to take praise for that, because that's looking a million times better than it was 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Yeah. And you have pre-season. Obviously, we're playing a few games away, but how important is it to get a good? I know it's obviously good to have a good pre-season, but how important is it to get your methods in quickly? Because obviously you are starting with a blank canvas. But
yeah, well, I think we need to bed in some players. I think we're still at a stage where we want to add some personnel to the squad, but they've got to be the right personnel. We're looking at 7 or 8 players that have got some past history with the club and past history with the league that we want to have a look in and around pre-season. But by the time we get to game 4, we've got to start seeing an identity to our team. We've got to start seeing an identity to our squad, and that's something that we're working towards. I think the first 4 games will be a matter of getting minutes and blowing some cobwebs away on all the players. Majority of that, the squad will play 45s in and around them first 3 or 4 games, with the obviously the idea of impressing, some getting the minutes in the tank that's required, but also some trying to earn a place in the squad. So first 4 games is very much with that in mind. Last 4 games, or at least the last 3 games, will be very much gearing ourselves up for the 4th. The game against Barnet will be very much a game that will be just looking to get the minutes into the squad players that are maybe short elsewhere. We'll be as strong as we can be, but with it being the last week of pre-season, the 4th is the most important day in that week. So we'll obviously be pretty diligent in that week leading up.
And as someone who obviously you've been at Hendon and you've been in the league below, but You would have played various teams. Obviously, one of the teams you'll be playing this year is Dulwich. Was there any fixtures you looked out in for in particular?
I think when you go into a new division, and like we've done, we hope that we would do it but by promotion. But it's every game seems like an attractive one. It's it's opposition. Obviously, we're familiar with a lot of the sides in the division. We played Slough last year in the FA Trophy. Dulwich and Billericay coming up, we're familiar with, and all the games seem to to have a sort of an added spice to them, and I'm looking forward to all of them. I'm with every one of you sitting in this room that the first two fixtures I look for were Woking home and away. I think that's that was something that I relate to you as a group of supporters. I know how important those two fixtures are for you. So it'd be no different for Dowson. I'm sure he'd be looking at those two fixtures. But every game seems to be an attractive one, and the fixtures are out now, and we can now start gearing up and preparing in pre-season for them first 3 or 4 games, because your preparation for the start of the season in terms of the opposition will be done in and around the latter 2 weeks of pre-season.
And I suppose my final question before we open it up to the floor is, do you set yourself targets, and if so, what is it, or if you want to tell us?
Look, I'm not a manager that's going to be hide behind a position, and we've got a new team. I think we have to be, realistic in terms of it being a new team. But I can assure you that changing room and this management team are looking at playoffs. It's my mindset. It's how I work. I will have monthly targets. I will have season targets. And what we've got to do as a football club is look to build on the successes of the last 2 years. I think that's, or 3 years even. Sorry, but that's I'm not going to hide behind the fact that we've got a new group of players and a new management team, and I'm sure some in here will talk about consolidation and make it's a new team. Let's look to the consolidating with next year in mind. That's not me. It's not me, I'm afraid. I want to be successful. I'll kick every ball. You'll see that on the touchline. Every game matters to me. Every set of points matters to me. So, and that's with success in mind. So our target as a changing room will be playoffs. If we come up short, it won't be for the will of trying.
And actually, so I've got one last question. Obviously, talking about you're obviously here as football manager of Hampton and Richmond, but I think just from the previous manager, he was obviously someone who would do lots of things in the community and things like that. Do you appreciate the responsibility you have on that side of things as well? Totally.
And I think Douse is second to none in that aspect. But the difference between Douse and myself is that I have a full-time job in and around my football job. Douse was obviously full-time here. If I was full-time in and around the football club, I'm sure I'd be able to do an awful lot more than just what I'm doing. But I will do my utmost to get in and around the community, meet as many people as I possibly can, because I know how important the community is with football clubs in mind. So, I'll do everything I can to be as busy as I possibly can, in taking on that role. So yes, of course, I know the responsibility that comes with managing football clubs community-wise, for sure. Yeah. The youth, the academies, that they are as important to me as my first team, and you'll see that. In and around my time at Hendon, I was as interested with the youth team as I was the first team. You'll see that in terms of the additions, to the squad and the group with youngsters, and Steve will play a big part in that. I've already had some good dialogue with Steve in regards to that. We've already got some of the academy players in and around us. We need to make sure that the youth know that there's a route path to the first team, and that'll be again something we'll look to harness.